All right, folks. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Sushant Rao. I run product marketing at Cloudera. And joining me today is, actually a little bit about me. I am in sunny Palo Alto. You should come visit when you get a chance. It's a fabulous place to visit. Let me introduce my colleague for today's session, Michael Coase. Michael, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Michael. I'm a product manager in our DataFlow group. I'm in also today sunny Santa Cruz, and I'd say if you have to pick Palo Alto or Santa Cruz, come to Santa Cruz.
I don't know, man. You do have the ocean, so I'll kind of I'll give you that. Michael, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna be? It's Halloween this weekend. What are you gonna dress up? And what's your favorite candy?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. It almost sounds a bit generic now, but really enjoyed Ted Lasso. So I was like, well, I'm not going
Oh,
to go as Ted Lasso, but then it would either be Danny Rojas or Roy Kent, even if
oh
they're
yeah,
complete opposites, but I love both of them.
yeah. But you know what? I think everyone's gonna go as Roy Kent. I feel like he's got such the number of people who like the amount I see on social media about people
That's
talking
true.
about right.
I
You
think
can go
I
there,
could
and I
pull
think
off
most people
Jamie
recognize like, oh
Tart
yeah,
with
Roy
my
Kent, right?
hair. Like I could do Jamie Tart as well with the hair. Let's see about that. I'll tell you after the weekend.
Okay. And then, what's your favorite candy?
I'll go with Reese's.
Ah, Reese's. That's a pretty good one. I don't necessarily have a favorite, but I do love Kit Kats. I don't know. There's something about the breaking them and then eating one. There's people I know who kind of eat layer by layer, which just I don't know how they do it, but supposedly there's people who do. So anyway, let's get to the kind of some of the logistics for today. So as you know, the topic is on NiFi flows in a hybrid data cloud. We also have two things for you. One is there's a surprise at the end, and you got to stay at the end and you'll see it. But we also have a raffle for some swag. So to enter the raffle, all you got to do is ask a question, and the question could be as simple as "What's the surprise?" That way, at least we know you're alive. But if you want to ask a question based off something that Michael and I have talked about, that would be appreciated as well. So with that, let's go on to the first slide. So some of you may be wondering, like, what's a hybrid data cloud, right? I've heard the term hybrid cloud. You guys are using this term hybrid data cloud. What does that mean? So what we mean is the ability to have the power of both public cloud and private cloud. And what we mean by that is kind of one of the fundamental basis of that is to have the same data stack in both places. The reason why that's important is that means you can move workloads and applications from one cloud to another without refactoring, right? You don't have to change the APIs, you don't have to rewrite the code. And that's only possible if you have the same data stack in both places. So that becomes really huge in terms of this ability of a hybrid data cloud. The other thing that is really important is to have consistent security and governance across the platform, right? You don't want to have a different policy framework when you go from one cloud to another. You need the management controls to be able to kind of manage all these different environments. So that's kind of what a hybrid data cloud is. So now you may be wondering, okay, well, that explains that. What's NiFi? For those of you who don't know, let me turn it over to Michael to talk about that.
Sure. Yeah. So a quick crash course on what NiFi is. It's a data movement framework, an open source tool where you design your data flows in a visual way. So it's very easy and intuitive to pick up. Also really easy to understand what your data flows are doing just by looking at the visual representation. But at the same time, it also gives you a lot of flexibility to deal with structured data or with unstructured data. And it is built for real-time data movement. So compared to other tools that are out there in the market that are really focused on batch use cases, NiFi is really optimized to handle constantly flowing streaming data. And you basically build your flows out of all these pre-configured, pre-built processors. So there's the likelihood that you can build your use case with NiFi out of the box is extremely, extremely high.
Excellent. So when it comes to, when you talk about real time and streaming data, NiFi makes sense. But the other product that people often ask about is Kafka. What's the difference between NiFi and Kafka? Are they competitors? Are they complementary? How does Kafka How does Kafka fit?
That is a common thing that happens. Spelling. I think Kafka is the product that gets most spelling errors in papers, etc., and presentations. I've seen all sorts of things. The I think I'd say they're complementary, and that's what we see with most of our customers. They use not Kafka or NiFi, but they use them together.
Mm-hmm.
The way you could think of using them together is a NiFi is your engine that actively moves data from A to B, and it has all these connectors to all these sources that are out there in your enterprise or in the internet where you want to get data from. And then Kafka has this is a passive system that allows you to buffer all these messages and make them available to lots of downstream applications. So you can use NiFi to connect to all these sources, get the data, collect it, and then put it in Kafka for applications to consume, because Kafka is great at just offering standard APIs that applications can connect to. If you wanna compare it to something in the real world, it's like NiFi could be the mailman, collects the letters, brings them to you, and Kafka is the mailbox. That's where the letters end up and where you pick them up again. The only difference with the real world is the mailman shouldn't really modify the content of letters, but NiFi actually can.
Oh, that's interesting. Good to
Yeah.
know. All right. So I know NiFi is available on prem. How does someone use, but we talked about having the same data stack on prem and public cloud. What is the options for NiFi in public cloud?
Yeah, so we just launched Cloudera DataFlow for the public cloud at the end of August, which is the first cloud native runtime for Apache NiFi data flows. And that allows all of our existing NiFi customers, but also the users of open source Apache, to bring their data flows to CDP public cloud, import them into our central catalog, and then deploy them into an AWS system. And the big difference here is that Cloudera Dataflow, our service, takes care of provisioning the clusters, takes care of scaling them up and down, and gives you a really new way of monitoring and staying on top of what's happening with your data flows.
Interesting. So some people may be wondering, okay, well, why would I want to move my NiFi flows if I got it working on prem? Why would I want to touch it? Why do I want to move it to public cloud?
Yeah, so I think generally speaking, with these data flows, it's a lot about, first of all, where's your source data?
Sure.
Right, you need to be close to the source data. So one reason could just be you have source data in the public cloud, and you now need to start working with that. But for our existing customers that are using NiFi on premises today, they often have a pipeline that looks something like you see on the slide now, where we pick up some data from edge devices. In this example, it's credit card transactions from ATMs. And then you publish them into Kafka. So here we are again, how they work together. Kafka is now this scalable buffer that takes in all these raw events. And then NiFi takes these events and transforms them and moves them to a data warehouse for fraud analysis, for example. Now, if you think about that pipeline, right, and how this pipeline can evolve in the future, you might onboard new retailers, you might onboard new ATMs, the data volume might change drastically, or the number of sources might change. So therefore, the requirements that you have for your data flow also change. The cluster that you build initially might not have the processing power you need anymore, and then you need to scale up. And scaling up on premises is really hard. There's no automated way to do this. You have to procure hardware. You have to go through the entire cycle, extend your NiFi cluster, and then you scaled it up. It's also not easy to quickly remove that infrastructure again and stop paying for it. It's there. You've paid for it. So in order to deal with these spikes and just make sure you can keep growing the data you process, that's a great use case to start looking into running NiFi in the public cloud.
Interesting. Okay. So kind of something to think about is elasticity. If you need that flexibility, agility, and elasticity, you may want to consider running NiFi in public cloud. But if you've got something where it's, you understand the capacity needs and you can predict it reliably, right? It may make sense to just leave that on-prem.
Yeah.
All right. So let's take a look at it.
Yeah, so what we're going to do now is we're basically going to take that pipeline that's currently on premises, and we're going to take our NiFi data flow, and we're going to run it in our new Cloudera data flow for the public cloud service. So
Okay.
let's just jump into the product. And the first thing I'm going to show you, so we're now in CDP Public Cloud here. This is our homepage. And in here we've got now a data flow tile. So this takes us to our new data flow public cloud service. And the starting page for us is always this dashboard. And that shows us all the currently deployed NiFi data flows. And as you can see, we get information about the current data that the flow is receiving, how much we're currently sending to our target systems, and we also get a visual representation of what's happening. So I just need to take one look at this and know, okay, this flow seems to be doing well. It's always doing the same pattern. It's probably just what my use case does. Same for this one, constant data coming in, and then every few minutes we write some data out. So gives me a perfect view of what's happening right now. Now, each of these deployments can also have more granular KPIs, because in most scenarios, right, this is helpful, but you have a certain business SLA. There's something you need to meet, and there's certain KPIs you need to monitor to make sure you meet these SLAs. So we can define KPIs on these data flows and keep track of them as well, and define alerts. So for example, here we're looking at the entire data that this flow is receiving from external systems. And we have defined an alert that would fire whenever we go below the 150 bytes per second boundary. And that would tell me, okay, something is happening with this flow. I should probably look into that. And these alerts will show up right here and will alert me that something is happening with this data flow. Now, each of these rows that you see here represent one NiFi flow that gets its own resources. And that allows us to isolate them from each other and make sure they get the resources they need, and they're elastic, like on their own. You're no longer bound to this shared NiFi cluster. Now, each of these rows that you see here, each of these flows can scale independently. But let's get back to our scenario where we had already a NiFi flow. And now the question is, well, how do we take that NiFi flow and how do we turn it into a row in this screen, which means we've deployed it using our experience. So I'm gonna switch over to a NiFi that I have in here, and we're gonna look at an example data flow. So these data flows in NiFi, they're organized in these process groups typically. That just allows you to group the data flow logic together. You can also define security policies on them and make sure that only the teams that are allowed to view these processors can actually edit them. So there's security policies on these process groups. So in our case, we're talking about this machine data. So we're picking that ATM machine data up, and we want to send it to our warehouse. So this is our actual data flow logic. You see, I've used some processors to get data from Kafka. I'm merging the records together to create bigger files, and then I'm just writing them out to S3, which is where our cloud data warehouse runs on. I now want to take this flow and I want to run it in this new data service. So what I have to do is I can export this entire data flow logic from my NiFi cluster simply by right-clicking this process group and then downloading that flow definition. And this will give me the entire data flow logic as a JSON file, basically exports it, and allows me to take it to the public cloud.
Sure.
So once I've done that, right, we're going back to data flow, back to our cloud service. And now we've seen the dashboard so far. But first things first, we now want to import that flow definition, right? The flow logic. That's what we do with this catalog. And the catalog allows me now to import the flow definition that I just exported from NiFi. So I'm going to give that just a name here. And then I'm going to pick that JSON file that I just downloaded. All right, so I'm just going to take a look for one. I don't think it downloaded the one that I actually wanted to download, so I'm just going to pick another one. So I picked that DataFlow, can add some comments, and I'm importing it to the catalog. And the moment it's in the catalog, I can now start deploying it in the public cloud, right? So that's my first step. I would take this flow that I want to take from on-prem to the public cloud, import it into the catalog. So I've already done that, and we can now start a deployment. Now we want to deploy this flow using the service. So we go to the latest version that I've uploaded, and I'm going to start the deployment. And this will now allow me to pick the target environment, which is right now, we're available on AWS, but we're about to launch our tech preview on Azure in mid-November as well.
Yep.
And then from this screen, right, you'd be able to deploy this flow to AWS and Azure without having to worry about all these infrastructural differences of these different cloud providers. So think how powerful that is. You have one central catalog, it's cloud agnostic, and you deploy it to any public cloud you want.
Yep, that also shows the power of hybrid, right? Which is that you can run it across different clouds.
Exactly. So I'm gonna pick that environment, and now we are getting into the deployment wizard. And the deployment wizard just helps me to provide all the information I need for that particular deployment. So I'm gonna give that a name as well. Just be very innovative and call it live stream. And now I'm going to provide some parameters that I need for this data flow to work. So we're connecting to some Kafka brokers. I need these connection informations, etc. Need to provide a password here as well. And this is just everything that the flow needs to connect to sources and targets. So once I've done that, just hit next. And then I can decide the sizing and scaling portion. So just if I don't know exactly how much data I'm expecting, I might just go with that extra small NiFi node type, and I'm going to turn on auto scaling. And because I still want to control costs, right? I don't want to scale it to infinity. I'm going to set a maximum boundary at 3 of these NiFi nodes. So this deployment would now automatically scale up to 3 and down if possible. And the final step, remember, we talked about these KPIs on the dashboard. We can now define them for our flow deployment as well. And we can do that for the entire data flow, where, for example, we are interested in how much data we're reading from external systems. Or we can go, so this is for for our NiFi power users. You can go all the way to these individual components that make up your data flow and pick a processor. For example, this one writes to S3, and then track a particular metric, like how many bytes are we sending to S3? Maybe that is really what I need to know. Or the average lineage duration helps us to figure out how long did it take a certain event to reach that S3 destination. So this tells us something about the latency of our data flow. So I can add as many of these KPIs as I want. And then I'm just going to hop to the final step. I'm going to review the information I provided and hit deploy. And now that deployment process is the real magic, right? That's the added value where we now, the service starts spinning up a completely new NiFi cluster.
Wow.
We're using EKS under the covers, so the Amazon Kubernetes service. We're pulling down that flow definition from the catalog, filling in all the parameters, setting up these KPIs, and then we're going to start data processing.
Awesome.
Yeah, so very simple. One thing that we've just introduced as well is the ability to do all of that using the CLI and do that programmatically, because the UI is really nice for demos and if you want to get started, but if you to operationalize this and really deploy your NiFi production flows, you want to plug it into your CI/CD pipelines.
Yep,
so
that makes sense.
One more thing I want to show you this is for our viewers that are not too familiar with NiFi yet, but have these data movement needs. We have something we call ready flows that's built into with this product that allows you to get started quickly with the most common use cases we see. So moving data from one Kafka topic to another, taking some Kafka data, moving it to S3. We're continuously building out this library here. And this just allows someone to get started really quickly without knowing how to build the actual flow. They just plug in configuration values and deploy it, and that's it.
Nice. That will make it a lot easier for people to get started too.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Shall we switch back to the slides and then summarize and then hit some questions?
Yeah, let's do that. So I think the demo, what we walked through is really that the three things I wanna highlight here again is the ready flow capability, right? Start very easily, quickly, even if you're not an experienced NiFi user. If you are an experienced NiFi user and you have these auto scaling needs with your existing data flows, yeah, bring them on. Take them on to CDF for the public cloud, and you get the scaling. And then finally, the central monitoring dashboard is a great addition for NiFi users to monitor everything in one single place, while also defining these more detailed KPIs.
That makes sense. So let's hit some questions. Got a question here that says, asking about the difference between NiFi and Flink and how you would use those together. Would you mind explaining that?
That's a great question. And now we've completed kind of our DataFlow streaming stack.
Yep.
Because at Cloudera, if we look at streaming, we think of Kafka, NiFi, and Flink as the core open source components that you need to build an end-to-end pipeline. So specifically looking at NiFi and Flink, NiFi is really great at moving records or moving files from A to B. It can do transformations. It does like schema changes. It changes the data format, but it doesn't do aggregations or it doesn't do windowing. So you can't, just pause for 5 minutes and let the events queue up and then like aggregate them. That is something that you would do in Flink, and then Flink really gives you that power to analyze the data in the stream and do SQL joins, basically treat it more like how you would treat a database.
That makes sense. So here's another question. Is DataFlow experience a part of CDP?
Yes. So right now it's available in CDP public cloud. And if you're a customer, it's just available for you to use. And works with consumption-based pricing. There's no additional license or anything you'd need to purchase.
Excellent. There's a question on, let me see if I can get the question right. How do you manage sources of flows on different environments? Would you have to have NiFi in each environment?
So environment is a pretty overloaded term. So I'm trying to parse that. But if you don't, you can typically make that work and access these remote environments. So if it's a CDP, we also have that environment term, and it means something very specific in the CDP world. You can deploy a flow in environment A that connects to something in environment B. You might need a few more setup steps to make sure security works, but it's definitely possible. And NiFi follows generally more of an architecture where you have a central NiFi system that reaches out to all your sources and targets.
That makes sense. I guess someone had a follow-up. So NiFi and Flink is a good combination. Sounds like the answer is yes. Obviously, they kind of solve different problems where, let me see if I get this right. NiFi is what moves the data, but Flink is what tells you kind of like, with windowing, right? Every 5 minutes, tell me what's going on with the state of the stream. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So customers that we see this really combining all these three technologies, that the pipeline typically looks something like NiFi is like the first component in the pipeline. It publishes all these events into Kafka, and then Flink reads the events from Kafka and does its analysis and powers applications or dashboards.
Makes sense. Next question. What is the future of NiFi?
It's great. We're going towards a more cloud native approach with NiFi. I think that's really where its future is. Right now, it's optimized for NiFi is basically great when you get a constant stream of data, right? But it doesn't. It's not optimized to deal with batching or things like that. But we'd always have something up and running, even if there's no data coming in. So one of the things we're working on right now is actually to improve that and to make NiFi more trigger friendly.
Okay.
If you think about something that you can do with these functions
Yep.
as a service frameworks like AWS Lambda, think AWS Lambda but with NiFi. Like
Okay.
that's one of the exciting things we're working on right now.
Excellent. Excellent. I think just looking at the time, I think we're going to switch over to let's hit the surprise first. So our producer saw this before our show and said, "You guys have to look at this." And for those of you who haven't seen it, you may know that there is a Facebook is changing its name to Meta, and the number of memes that are coming out is almost inexhaustible. So we saw this for Feta, and it was just so funny that we just had to share it with you. So that's a surprise. If you want to have some time to kill, go on to your favorite search engine, whatever it may be, and type in meta memes, and you will be quite impressed at the originality of what people are coming up. This is like the gift that keeps on giving, and who knows, we make this may make this part of our regular live streams where we include a meme that we saw that week that we just love. So it made our day and probably will make our weekend and our week. So we thought we'd share it with you. And the last thing is that we have the raffle winner. So it's Maria Ola Zellerick. If I mispronounce it, I apologize, but Maria Ola Zellerick. If you can email socialmedia@cloudera.com. Again, social media, just put it as all as one word at cloudera.com. We'll send you the raffle prize, and hopefully you enjoy your swag. You can get t-shirts, you can get, I actually got some performance wear because I go running every now and then. So that's what I got. Anyway, folks, thank you for joining us. Michael, thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking with you as always. And thank you for
Thanks for
talking
having
about
me.
Hybrid Data Cloud and NiFi.
Thank you.